So when you get your kale cutting, it will look something like this. And if you're not quite ready to start growing your cuttings yet, you could pop it into a glass of water. Make sure you change the water every day to keep it fresh, but it will keep for maybe 1 to 2 weeks just in a glass of water. So what you'll notice on your cutting, if the person that you bought it from has done it correctly, is you'll have lots of these sort of leaf node areas, which is where the leaf joins the stalk. Just cut some more off. And it's these areas where your new plant will grow. So if you get a cutting sort of this size, I'd probably cut this into 3, maybe 4 pieces. I know a lot of people will be nervous about doing that and they'll probably just stuff the whole thing in the pot, but that's just as good, but you won't get as many out of your cutting. And I know eBay cuttings can be quite expensive, so it just maximises the amount of plants that you can get from one cutting. So let's have a go. So you want to cut just above a leaf node. You'll see just there's a little tiny leaf just starting to form. So just cut above and halfway between one leaf node and another leaf node, and that piece should produce a plant on its own. So we'll just keep going until we've got all our cuttings ready. I like to pop my cuttings off into these little cell trays. I just find it easier to manage, and you can also, once the roots start to grow, you can see them growing out the bottom, and then you know it's ready to pot into a bigger pot. So all I do is I get my little cuttings and I pop them just into the corner of the cells. And firm the little compost, just general purpose compost, around the bottom of the cutting. Make sure that when you bury the cuttings you leave the little leaf node poking out. Don't bury that. That's all there is to it. Just I tend to sit my cell trays in a tray of water, and water from the below, and that stops the rooted cuttings rotting in the pot. Here are some cuttings that I took maybe 2 weeks ago. So they were just stalks originally, no leaves on. Just pop them in some fresh water. Change the water every day, and eventually you'll get something that looks like this. And then you can cut at each node like before to propagate your new plants. A bit more tricky when there's leaves on. Just be careful when you do it. I usually discard this bottom piece because it's been sat in the water, it's a bit slimy and tends to rot. So after you've planted your kale cuttings, just give them water from above. Make sure the compost's damp. And then from that point onwards, I would water the tray and just make sure there's always a little bit of a reservoir of water in the tray. And eventually you'll begin to see white roots forming on the bottom of your pots. And that's when you know that they're ready to either pot on, or if it's sort of spring coming into early summer, you could just plant them straight outside. So here's some cuttings that I propagated sort of probably say 4 or 5 weeks ago. So they're doing really well. All you have to do, you can just see the old stump there. That'll probably fall away when I take it out of the tray. Just give the cell tray a squeeze underneath. Yep. Just be careful when you pull them out that they don't tear away from the roots. So there you can see that's the old cutting. That's the new plant growing from the leaf node. And there's some really nice roots. So this plant of this size, I'd either pop into a larger pot. You can grow them in pots, but they tend to do better in the ground because they do make quite a big bushy plant. You probably only need maybe 1 or 2 plants per family. Or you could plant this straight out into the ground. Any time of year really, they're really hardy. I mean, these have been outside sat in the snow. Just brought them in to make this video.